Hi, welcome to a newbie guide to REITs analysis, and in this chapter, we'll learn about the scrutiny of debt and what are the important things to look out for when examining the debt level of REITs. So I think the global financial crisis in 2008 was a watershed moment for the REITs industry, where many painful lessons were learned, and those painful lessons came in the form of expensive losses and money loss for investors who did not pay close attention to the debt management. So I think the main lesson learned and the most important one is that you cannot assume that loans can be refinanced. In the global financial crisis, credit just dried up, and even if you want to refinance your debt, you could not do so. There was just no credit available, even at the much higher interest cost. So there were a few lessons that learned from the GFC that the REITs managers learned from, and therefore post GFC you see a lot of changes made to the way debt was managed. So there were a lot of massive rights issues done because the REITs just could not refinance the debt, and they have to come up with the cash from somewhere to repay the debt, and that only somewhere was through rights issues to the unit holders, and that came at massive discounts to the NAV, and therefore huge dilution, and therefore a lot of capital destruction. The first lesson learned was that the REIT managers should avoid high debt pillars, and preferably less than 15% of the total debt should mature in any 1 year. So what happened was that for a few REITs, they have like 40%, 30+% of their debt maturity of their debt maturing in that year, and therefore when credit dried up completely, they just couldn't refinance 30 to 40% of their debt, and therefore have to come up with a massive amount of capital to repay their debt. So that's the first lesson learned from GFC. Just avoid the having high debt pillars, and just try to have a less than 15% of their total debt maturity in any 1 year. If you think about it, right, if you cannot have more than 15% of your debt maturity in any 1 year, then that would necessarily imply that you need at least 6 debt pillars, because 100 divided by 15 is 6 point something, right, almost 7. So this rule pretty much leads to the conclusion that if you look at the REIT's debt maturity profile, there should be at least 6 to 7 pillars, and not just 2 or 3 pillars. Because that's just over concentration of the debt. But of course, a lot of REITs do so, and they pile on the debt in the near term of the next 2 or 3 years to obtain lower cost of interest. Because of the in general, for interest, the longer you go, because of the steep yield curve, therefore the more interest you have to pay. So a lot of the REITs are taking the shortcut approach and having a lot of the debt in the next 2 or 3 years, and therefore getting lower cost of funding. There's no right or wrong, but there's always the risk versus reward, right? If you choose to pile on your debt in the next 2 or 3 years, having a 30 to 40% every year, and there's a credit event coming, then is this a risk justified for the reward of having a lower interest cost, right? So that's always something that the investors should be aware of. The second thing to learn was that you should have diversified sources of capital. So a lot of the REITs were depending on the CMBSs, so commercial mortgage-backed securities, to fund their capital structure prior to GFC, and this source of capital completely vaporized post GFC, right? So in fact, nowadays, if you look at the balance sheets for the REITs, most of them don't have this stuff anymore, because this stuff just completely vaporized post GFC. Some of them still have it. It's not a bad thing. It's not a wrong thing, but it's becoming a lot less relevant nowadays. So other than CMBSs, you also have bank loans, MTN notes, so bond issuances, so locking in interest rates at fixed costs for maybe like 5 to 7 years. So also RCF, so revolving credit facilities from the banks. So try to have as many different and diversified sources of capital raising as possible, so as to reduce the risk of any single source of a capital source vaporizing in any 1 year. So this is a good example of a well-managed debt maturity profile, and this is the coming from the debt maturity profile for Ascenders REIT in 2023. So look at it, right? How many pillars of debt do they have on the balance sheet? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10. So if you just group these three together, because they are pretty short pillars in each year, right? You have like 8 pillars in total, right? Which is perfect, right? So you want to look for at least 6 to 7 pillars for the debt maturity profile to be quite a well stretched out debt pillar, right? So look at the debt pillars. It's well stretched out, and the heights are not too high in 1 year. So you can say quite safely that they have like less than 15% of the debt maturity in any 1 year. So that's a very safe profile, right? Well managed. You can also see that they have many different diversified sources of capital. You have term loans from the banks. You have MTN notes, so bonds sold to investors. You also have revolving credit facilities from the banks. So these are the facilities we can draw on as and when you like, and also pay off as and when it's available. So therefore, you don't lock in the loans for a very, very long time, right? And there's a flexibility involved when you do such RCF facilities. So it's always a good flexibility obtained. Increasingly important will be green debt. Especially in the ESG era, I think green debt is becoming more and more important, and also a good way to reduce the cost of interest. So, in return for conditions such as greening your properties, such as having a more reducing the energy consumption and stuff, you get a lower cost, and therefore this green debt can help to reduce the overall cost of capital of interest. And also having green debt means that you have also options to another pool of investors, right? So ESG concerned investors who can only who are mandated to invest in ESG green debt. Therefore, if you have green debt facilities available, that also broadens out your pool of investors to borrow money from. So you can see in this case, for a standard REIT, which is a pretty well managed REIT in general, you can see that their debt pillars are well spread out. The heights are not too high in any 1 year, and you also have a very, very good diversified sources of credit on the balance sheet. So I think these are the main things you want to look out for REITs debt maturity. And on the converse side, you want to avoid REITs with a lot of the debt all pile out in the next 2 or 3 years. So like 30%, 40%, and then 30%. This would be the worst REITs to invest in, because first of all, you might not be able to refinance any one of the debt issues if there's a credit event in any 1 year. And let's say there's a spike in interest rates in any 1 year, then when you refi the particular year's debt, everything have to roll over to a much higher interest rate because you're caught in that environment, right? So I think these are in general the points you should look out for when you examine the debt profile for REITs.